Hello, my ravens. Um, I don't know how good the lighting is in here. If you can't see me, hopefully you can hear me. It suddenly occurred to me that I haven't done a reading from Snowy Pines, my newest book. I thought I would read the back of it, then pick a kind of a exciting scene and read it to you. So give you a little preview, a sample of you might see if you might want to buy it. It's only 99 cents on Kindle, and it's like $9 and something plus shipping on Amazon. I don't know the exact number, but you can look it up pretty easy. Carson McClane found Hell Hospital, and there's no checking out. I actually just now noticed that part. Seriously. Something horrible happened between Carson McClane and his wife Julie that tore them apart. He waited day after day for her to call to let him know if they still had a marriage. When she finally did, Julie wanted him to travel cross-country from Maryland to California for a face-to-face. Driving and halfway through Colorado, Carson collides headlong into a tree in the midst of a blinding blizzard. In and out of consciousness, Carson notes there's something not quite right about the paramedics that carry him to the ambulance. Shadowy faces in their hands. Are those claws? When he comes to, he's bedded down in Snowy Pines Hospital. It doesn't take him long to discover that he is the only living patient under their care, and he wasn't there by accident after all. The scene I'm going to read it's going to pick up right after Carson wakes up, it's after the wreck, and he went through different memories and stuff, and now we're going to pick up right where he wakes up at. Okay, here we go. Ugh, my head, Carson whispered, fingering a large bump on his forehead. He thought he felt blood. Where am I? He opened his eyes to dull blackness. For a second he feared he had gone blind. After a couple of minutes he was relieved to see when his eyes began to focus in what he realized was a dark room. Hello? Is anyone there? Beside him he saw a nightstand. There was also a sink and a paper towel dispenser. Looking down he saw a wax tile floor. Across the room there was an open door that led into a bathroom. Then it dawned on him he was in a hospital room. Thinking back, he vaguely remembered being carried by what he thought were EMTs. Realizing this brought many questions to his mind. How long was I out? He would have expected to wake up in an emergency room surrounded by doctors and nurses, not stowed away in a dark room not even being observed. He wondered if he might have been in a coma and was just now waking up. No, that couldn't be it. He had a dark feeling that something wasn't right. Touching his head again, he felt a small stream of liquid ran down his face. His head was bleeding. He could feel the small gash. No bandage? What did they do? Had they taken him straight from the ambulance and put him in a bed? He then noticed that he wasn't wearing a hospital gown. He was in the clothes he was wearing when he crashed. What the hell is going on? What kind of hospital is this? From what he could tell, the room was dusty and ice cold. Not a hint of heat emanated from anywhere, and he was shivering. It was time to get some answers. He felt around for the call light, found it, and pressed the button. When the speaker came on, he heard no voice, only a weird sound he couldn't discern. It sounded as if someone were gurgling and having difficulty breathing. Hello? Can I get a nurse, please? There was no answer, but the speaker went off. A lot of good that did, he thought. He waited a moment. When he was ready to get out of the bed and walk out, the door cracked and slowly came open. He couldn't see who walked in. Like the EMTs, his visitor seemed to be a silhouette. Barely any light came from the outside. As dark out there as it was in the room. He heard the sound again, only it was much louder now. It was that of labored breathing and gurgling. Hello? Nurse, are you okay? He found it ironic that he, the patient, was checking on the nurse. Once again there was no reply. The figure merely stood motionless at the archway. Now he felt more than ever that something wasn't right. He squinted in an attempt to make the person out. He could see the shadow of something snake-like around their neck. It was time to get to the bottom of this. He reached for the call light button and pressed the light switch. When it came on, Carson's life changed forever. "What the he said in barely a whisper. What stood before him was more horrible than anything he had ever seen in his worst nightmares. He couldn't believe his eyes. "I have to still be asleep." It was a blonde-haired nurse, early 40s, wearing a black scrub top, white skirt, and a white lab coat. It wasn't her attire that horrified him, though. She was missing her entire lower jaw. The snake-like shadow he had seen was her tongue. It looked as long as she was tall and wrapped around her neck like a boa constrictor. This was where the hissing and gurgling noises were coming from. Carson froze, unable to move or speak, paralyzed by the monstrosity that now began wobbling zombie-like toward him. The thing reached inside its pocket and pulled out a gleaming scalpel. Even now seeing this, Carson could not snap himself out of this trance and get away. With one quick action, the thing hurled the small blade at him. Only after it buried itself in his forearm did he finally come awake. "Ow!" Ripping the scalpel out of his arm, he leaped over the rails and crawled into a corner. He was trapped. The thing had already reached for another glimmering blade. He ducked as it threw it. The blade hit an inch above his head. "What are you?" he screamed. The nurse thing didn't even acknowledge him. It only reached for another projectile. Does this thing have an unlimited supply of ammo? This time it did not throw its weapon. It came down on him with all the force of its right arm. It took both of his to keep her from impaling him. Now he was face to face with the monstrosity, a mere 2 inches from the sharp instrument ramming through his throat. The tongue wriggled around like a separate life form with a will of its own. It brushed across his face, slick and as cold as ice. Out of the corner of his eye, he looked to the floor where the first scalpel stained with his blood lay. He dared to let go with the left hand and reach for it. It took everything he had to hold the nurse creature off. He slid the scalpel toward him with the tip of his fingers, brought it within reach, and gripped it. He then jabbed it into the nurse's temple. It let out a demented squeal and turned, covering the wound with its hand. Carson saw this as an opportunity and reached around it, slicing its throat. It gurgled more than ever, went to its knees, and collapsed into a puddle of its own blood. His breathing was heavy. He was on the verge of hyperventilating. He cowered into the corner like a child hiding from a monster. "Where the hell am I?" he screamed, watching the body jerk and twitch as it died. The more appropriate question might have been, where in hell was he? He knew he couldn't hide in the room forever. Forcing himself to stand and get a grip on reality, he made his way to the door. He put his hand on the knob and hesitated. What if there were more of them? For all he knew, there could be a whole army of them awaiting him. Anything could be outside that door. His brave side, however, began to take over. He had no intention of staying there the rest of his life. He wanted out of this place. Carson braced himself for the worst and pulled the door open. I think that's a good place to stop. This has been a sample from Snowy Pines by me, Chris Snider. Like I said, 99 cents on Kindle, $9 and something, plus shipping and handling for the paperback on Amazon. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Like it and share it, please, with your friends. And that'll do it for this video. And as I always say, happy reading.